Morning, Greg.
Good morning. How are you, Kathryn?
I'm great. I'm great. This is so fun. And just to warn everybody, Greg and I are friends. And what I mean by that is we met not that long ago, but we just really hit it off.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't think of anybody else that I would love to talk with
Mm,
about the art of reciprocity.
mhm.
And of course, to remind all of you, I'm the founder and chief vision officer of Work Truck Solutions. And Greg has, so you can see we already have this going. I sent this to him and he said, leave it. So, Greg, you want to tell us why this was okay?
I've tried to put my signature on emails. And thank you for the invite and the nice words, Kathryn. This will be our shortest conversation ever because we've spent hours and hours talking till all hours of the night. So we'll try to get through this in a half hour. But I am the director of a bunch of stuff. I also have a number of other titles. I head up our EV practice business development. So that includes all the pre-entrant EV companies or OEMs, in helping them and supporting them with different studies that we offer. I also work on our Zappy ride, which is a recent acquisition in the last year and a half. I head up business development for them. And then I still have a lot of, I'd say, influence on what goes on jdpower.com. That was where I started with JD Power almost 5 years ago, and still have a hand in kind of shaping a lot of the monetization that goes on the website. So yeah, a bunch of stuff is perfect. I'm actually probably going to change my business card. Thank you.
A bunch of stuff.
Yeah,
Director of BOS.
I'll be asked to be careful of that. That was
That's why I
very
put the
close.
O in
That
there.
was very close.
All righty. Well, we're going to start off. Greg and I talked a lot about this, and he actually watched a podcast of Robert Cialdini. That's how you say his name. I
Yeah.
met him when I was teaching marketing part-time for a while, and his 7 principles of influence. When I back then it was 6, but he's added one since, and he has this whole study around humans humans live in communities, and these are biological. They cross over all um, culture, all the different countries, etc. We're wired because we live in communities. We're wired to behave certain ways, and in different countries, the different principles have different priorities, but they all exist. And so it's really interesting. And reciprocity is one of them. And so I'm just going to start off with if you're really passionate about this, if you've found this is a theme that you like, please think about podcast or reading, whatever you do, please think about that because it's really mind blowing, honestly, when you start digging into this. And plus, Robert Cialdini is a humorous person, and he makes it really enjoyable to hear about stuff. And we don't have more time than that because Greg and I have to talk.
Yeah.
All right. So I actually updated this last night because I was listening to the sessions yesterday. And one of the things that came out of actually Lauren's session was I realized that you got to start somewhere, right? And this
Mm.
starting with an honest, synergistic goal in goal in common, right? Or at least agreement that you're not going to have goals that are at each other's odds, right? And then this idea of, in addition to that, just think about it as constantly in alliance and doing mentorship. Because do you, Greg, have you had either mentors or mentees that have been important to you?
Oh, my whole career. And I'll include you in that list because I will self-admit the commercial space, until we met at the Green Truck Summit last year, this was a space that, self-admittedly, I had very little knowledge. And now I feel like on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm probably still a 4 or 5 on understanding the whole ecosphere of it. But you've helped me considerably with that. But yeah, no, thank you. And even JD Power to some extent, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but
Right.
we do have some uh, practices in commercial, but we're just dabbling. We're mainly oriented around passenger vehicles and in that space. So you're going to help us. And it's going to be this reciprocity situation where we both support
Right.
each other in boosting our
Yeah.
own knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to give an example of that in a little
Yeah.
bit. So,
Yeah.
but I just like to reflect, and it was such a great day.
Mhm.
So we're going to tell you some stories, right, about reciprocity. We thought that would be the best way to kind of illustrate. And
Yeah.
so we kind of came up with, and personally, 1 + 1 = 3 isn't enough for me. It's always got to be more, right? And so we're going to start off with Greg's going to talk a little bit about, this concept of how companies think about reciprocity with their customers.
Mhm.
Then we're going to use an example of competitors working together. And then we'll talk kind of more about what started off with, which is how you work as a generalist, but with a specialist on something to do 1 + 1 = 5, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I couldn't remember if it was Costco or Sam's. Was it Costco?
Costco. No, yeah, it's
Okay,
Costco.
good.
Yeah.
Okay, so you go ahead.
No,
Tell us
I thank
your
you. Yeah, you
theory
got it
here.
right. I was just there, and I go there as many people do to shop, but then also the free samples are sometimes my lunch or dinner. But I will tell you that in many of those experiences, and just a recent one, a lady that was doing the demonstration for these little chicken nuggets, I went up there as I usually do and just grabbed one and started walking away. And she said, "Excuse me, it seems like you really enjoy these. This is your second time coming here." She totally busted me. And she handed me a coupon and said, this coupon is good for 15% off. I can't remember the exact amount, but that was an opportunity for her. I'm already a customer at that point. I mean, it was free, but now I have a vested interest. She has a vested interest in me. And what Costco has seen, I actually pulled some data. 68% of people that take those free samples, it influences a purchase decision. So that's pretty significant. And
That
85,
is,
85% of the people say it enhanced their shopping experience at Costco. So think about that reciprocity, just type an arrangement with this company, right? You walk in there
yeah,
for muffins, and you come out with a shopping cart full of stuff, right? But it's these free samples that are really that opportunity for Costco to make a difference. And when you look at, there was a recent study done by Supermarket News that said in many cases these vendors are seeing 600 to 2,000% increase in sales off these samples. So
when I was teaching marketing, I
yeah.
I I taught about some of these ways,
Mhm.
but it wasn't until I read Cialdini and saw some of how he talks about what's wired inside of us,
Yeah.
that it actually gets triggered.
Yeah.
I'll do
Yeah.
something for you. Well, guess
Yeah.
what? That kind of, we're not saying it's required for
Right.
sure. We're not, but it triggers something and people are more open to being persuaded,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
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 Our company too, JD Power was founded by Dave Power, and he literally, was sitting at his kitchen table with all these envelopes, hand licking these envelopes and stamping them, and including a dollar bill in the envelope to entice and incite
Yeah.
the consumer to give them the feedback on vehicles primarily. And in exchange, of course, they get the dollar. That dollar still is included in each of the envelopes. I think adjusted for inflation, it's probably a couple cents, but it still gives that consumer not only an incentive, but it gives them an opportunity to speak on a product that they certainly had spent hours thinking about, which is a
Right.
car. It's one of the biggest purchases you make. And so Dave realized this real early on, and I think it goes back to your generalist specialist, right? We are the generalist. We are not the specialist. We don't make the cars, but we get all the feedback from these consumers with all these surveys and give it to the specialist and say, this is what your consumers are saying.
Yeah.
You can either adapt, you can ask additional questions on these surveys if you want. And this is really the genesis of what we support every single OEM with is this survey data. Every single OEM buys the data from JD Power. That's not a brag. It's just saying that the OEMs rely so heavy on this consumer sentiment data to shape their vehicles, right?
Yeah.
I actually sat in front of a car dealer here in Detroit about a month ago, and he had been the general manager of this dealership for over 30 years. And he said, Greg, they don't make a bad car anymore. And I took a little bit of pride in that because I think
Yeah.
the car manufacturers have realized that the consumer has a say in the
Yeah.
problems, the quality issues, right? We could
Yeah.
go on forever, Kathryn, about this, but God bless the car manufacturers for taking this serious, understanding what the consumer wants, and not just kind of being going off on their own reservation.
So we like we've told it, we've already warned everybody that we could talk forever, but this
Mhm.
really does highlight what I feel inside, which is if you do the right thing, good things happen for your business,
Mhm.
right? It's not bad business. It's good business,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
And actually, I was introduced to ChargeScape the other day, and I think it's you were talking about Iona, right? These are
Mhm.
situations where the big companies have kind of set aside their competitive block,
Mhm.
said by working together, and we heard that yesterday a lot too. We
Mhm.
heard people say, competitors in a market. Gregory's example of two bus companies in a market where, if you work together, there's going to be some synergy there that's going to be mutually beneficial. And so,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. And of
Yeah.
course, you're in that EV area, so you're watching how holding hands is really important because it's all brand new, right?
It is. And, our public charging study gets distributed out to a number of these companies, but it also goes to the Department of Energy. And the Department of Energy is really charged with strategy and guidance around infrastructure around public charging. What was evident, and it still holds true today, is charging is abysmal, right? If you exception
Yeah,
out Tesla and Tesla charging stations, only 2 out of 5 charging stations actually work. And this is
right,
based on real data that we get through a partnership with PlugShare. So these car manufacturers, are getting a lot of heat from
right,
a lot of different sources and saying, "Hey, this isn't our specialty, but let's work together because, if we're going to put out these vehicles, we've got to have a say in how the
right.
charging experience is." And so, again, this is a great example of these consortiums getting these OEMs together and saying, let's solve this problem together. Let's work with public charging operators. Let's work with the Department of Energy. Let's work with the other stakeholders, even consumer feedback on these things, and say, what can we do to improve the lives of the charging infrastructure, because it's not good right now.
And of course, we heard yesterday too, the workhorse session about how if you're in business
Hmm.
and you have to have the dependability and you have to have the convenience,
Hmm.
you need to set your own charging up. And so we'll talk a little bit about
Yeah,
that whole how to get there too, right? Because
sure.
you need
Yeah,
help.
yeah. No, thank you. Those companies are realizing that there's a separate dependence of adoption outside of just getting the consumer over the fear of going to an electric vehicle from an ICE engine, and they realize a big part of that is the public charging experience, which is a great segue into what we're going into, Kathryn, because really adoption has everything to do with educating consumers. So if you want to segue into this, and I can talk a little bit about our experience with other manufacturers and other companies that we've done similar things with. I think this
So
is
let's hold it. Let's
sure.
why don't you tell the audience, because I'm going to talk about what we're doing together now, as you
Okay.
know.
Yeah.
But why don't you talk about what you've done on the retail side, as we
Yeah.
call it, or the consumer side,
Yeah.
um, and why you acquired Zappy Ride, and to kind of start with that.
Yeah. So a little bit of a humble brag here, but we launched a consumer facing, I guess I'll call it a microsite on the GM sites and Chevrolet.com with the Blazer launch and the Equinox EV launch, and now the Silverado's launching this quarter. We launched that about a year ago. And if you remember kind of the climate a year ago, the domestic manufacturers were very nervous about EVs. In fact, some of them had actually publicly said they're pulling back. GM just did their quarterly earnings call for Q2, and they saw a 60% increase in EV sales, over 40%, and that's 60% year over year, and over 40% Q2 to Q2 yearly sales increase. Now, we're not going to take credit for all that, but the reality is that that launching that consumer-facing microsite allowed their consumers to quickly get all the information they needed to get over really what I call anxiety about going to EV. And that includes what are the incentives and rebates, which we all know pricing is super important when you're purchasing a vehicle, what's available. So they allowed access to inventory. Total cost of ownership is on that site. And you can see this on Chevrolet.com/electric, where you can kind of play with different filters and say, what does this truly mean in terms of over a 5-year period of what my cost of ownership is going to be compared to an ICE vehicle? And they included routing maps, charging maps, all the things that a year ago or prior to this, it was very cumbersome for a consumer to even find this information, and many gave up. So again, we won't take credit for the 60% increase, but the fact that GM realized that the consumers needed a place to go to understand what it truly means. I will tell you, as an EV owner in Detroit, which is very difficult, or it was for a while there, all the pre-purchase anxiety I had went away the week after I had the vehicle. All that battery anxiety, range anxiety, all that stuff goes away. And so what Kathryn is doing and building with our support is what I call the mitochondria of the commercial EV industry. This is going to be in what we'll give a little preview. This isn't the final product, Kathryn, by the way. We're going to actually make this we're going to make this better for you. You weren't on the last call, but Kathryn's building out a site that appeals to every stakeholders that in her ecosystem. That means OEMs, that means the dealers, that means the end user will be able to access information to make those decisions very quickly and very easily. So I know, Kathryn, on your presentation yesterday, I can't remember the gentleman you were speaking with, but you both agreed that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. What we've seen on the passenger vehicle side is you can accelerate that adoption by allowing this level of information in one site, and you will see major benefits in your industry, the commercial truck industry. Think about garbage trucks, residential, commercial routes. They're all calculated, they're all planned. They go back to a central hub. That's a massive, like, think of waste management, all the routes they have and all the efficiencies that they're looking for. I can't think of a better industry that could adopt this overnight when they have this type of information, right? So anyway, sorry, I went on a little bit of a
no, that's okay. And this is why we clicked when we were at the Green Truck Summit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you were there to learn about that space.
Yep.
And I was there to find partners that could help us do the things that we know the market needs, which is partly education, but I'd go beyond it. It's kind of like education on steroids. It's practical stuff, right?
Yep.
So the one part of it, of course, is finding vehicles, sure, but learning about them, like what vehicles are available and how could they possibly be of interest to our company and our use case.
That's right.
And what are the questions that I have? And you're right, these are screenshots of mocks that we've done initially, but we're now in full on implementation. We're hopeful to be able to launch this on Convoy in January.
December. December.
Okay, I'm being conservative, but yeah, we'll tell everybody it'll be a party. And so, the goal being that what we want is to really usher in an opportunity around the commercial use cases. We've talked about this throughout the whole 2 days
Mhm.
and around needs. And so in addition to that, like you said, there's an opportunity to actually do mapping and planning if you are using public, right?
Mhm.
There's an opportunity to, this is the one I fell in love with because who has all of the incentives across the whole United States,
Right.
searchable by the vehicle, by the geography. Holy cow.
Right.
And, given that dealers are our primary customers, we obviously work with the OEMs and the upfitters
Mhm.
and, serve the end buyer on Convoy, but our platform is built to help dealers help the customers, right?
Right.
This is a great empowerment tool for the dealers to be able to have real conversations, not confusing conversations,
That's
right?
right. Yeah.
So, and then, like you said, a total cost of ownership, focused around what's important to a business.
Yeah.
So,
You think about a fleet manager that needs to understand if I'm going to get 5 to 10 of these, what does that truly mean in terms of savings? And then they can play around with all the assumptions to
mhm.
get down to their level of either the geographic area or type of vehicle that they want. So we're going to have your whole catalog in there. This is going to be really cool.
I know, and it's fun because this is partially a labor of love because what
Yeah.
we have is of course all the types of inventory that we display on Convoy, but that's not what we're limiting it to. We're putting in all the EV solutions
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
anybody that comes to Convoy can search obviously for something that's in stock that we have, but also can learn about anything, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yep.
that's what will drive adoption. That's will help pull people forward into this.
Yeah.
And so definitely offering them ways to, as a business, plan. I mean, they wouldn't ever want to do anything below level 2, right?
Probably not in your space. No.
Not in our space, period.
Yeah.
And then what do you do? Because that's trickier.
Hmm.
Like I could call somebody today and get a level 1 charger in my garage, right?
Right. Right.
But this is a little more. So this idea of empowering locals to find a certified electrician, this came up a couple times yesterday. I was like, oh, wait till you hear it tomorrow.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And this is a
yeah.
mock-up. Like we're going to include all the chargers respective to whoever the consumer or whoever the dealer is, or whoever the end user is, right? We can add there's a lot of things we can do here, Kathryn, but this is an opportunity for, like you said, the fleet manager or the business to get a respective charger. If they're going to go all Fords, well, Ford has their own different charges that they need.
Right.
You can implement that. So back to the TCO real quick. I know we could talk forever. Uh, I'm going to steal a little thunder from the California governor's office. I think she's speaking after me today, but I keep hearing the election, the election, the election, the election's going to change everything. Well, the reality is this: the federal funds, which got approved almost 2 years ago through the
Yeah.
Inflation Reduction Act, are now starting to be released, meaning they're starting to funnel down to the state level. So these
Right.
incentives, rebates, in addition to all the money available for underserved areas and rural communities and those types of areas, all those billions of dollars are finally being distributed. That's not going away regardless of whether the election goes one way or the other. That money has already been earmarked and slated. So as a business, you will have access to a lot of this funding: school buses, airport shuttles, garbage trucks, all these things that power or that consume a lot of electric power are going to have those federal funds available here if they haven't already. So I thought that was important to note, especially when we talk about this incentive and rebate section, because this is only going to get more it's going to get more robust as these funds get released. And the California governor's office will speak more on that later today. and it's not just California. It'll be every state gets to take
Right.
advantage of these funds based on different criteria. But there's a lot of money going into the commercial space. So
And of course, early adopters
mhm,
get an advantage in a
yes,
lot of different ways. And so helping people understand what those advantages are, which can include things like um, having the early money, because it'll go away. We all
yep,
know that. Um, having a lot of attention from people that are going to help, right?
that's
And
right.
and at some point it becomes less of a driving focus and more of a, okay, now you can join the big crowd, right?
Yeah.
But also there, when I was teaching, I did a bunch of research around um, how much a business gains from being perceived in a market as being ecologically green.
Mm,
And it's really interesting, the kind of market share that a business can that a business can get,
yeah.
they can gain by, and we see, wraps aren't that expensive. They should be being done anyway on any, I highly recommend, probably haven't said this anywhere lately to a bigger audience, but if you're a business and you are doing something, and if you're a dealer talking to a business, you should be talking to them about how to maximize their own billboard. It is by far the least expensive way to market your business. And I know businesses that park their vehicle a certain place all the time, just to make sure that they're maximizing that. But
Yeah.
since if you do recognize that, being able to say that you're green and that it's a big impact on how people think, who they call first,
Yeah,
right?
we forget about that. That is an ancillary benefit of this movement of around electrification of vehicles. And actually some companies have goals around it, and so they need to actually have something tangible to show how green they are, or how sustainable, how much carbon they're emitting, and that type of thing. So
Yes.
by the
Yeah.
way, you're not showing this, but we're going to include it in your Convoy site is those carbon emissions.
Oh, yay.
So they, companies that place a huge importance on that, or
Yes.
well, even if it's just for marketing, will have the opportunity to showcase to their clients, how much carbons they potentially would save by going electric.
Absolutely. Well, it's good to measure, right? I mean, that's how we get better.
Yeah, yeah. So
So, well, as we're going to keep talking, of course, we could talk forever, but I did want to talk about ways that people um, help and offer. So I just wanted to say one of the ways that Work Truck Solutions has kind of proactively offered to help the industry is we've developed a commercial playbook. It's now 7 chapters. Each chapter is focused on something we think is important to dealers and other people in the industry, whether it's around, I mean, there's how financing is different. There's in commercial, there's, digital marketing, and there's a couple different chapters on that. Um, there's please, if you're interested, just ask for it because it's free, right? And I wanted to also bring up another resource. So Bernie Brenner is one of the co-founders of TrueCar, and he's a very, very smart guy. And a number of years ago, he wrote this book, The Sumo Advantage, which is it's about business development and how to leverage it. But in reality, and I actually talked to Bernie a couple days ago and just let him know that I wanted to push his book, wanted to make sure it was okay. But when you think about reciprocity, this concept of business development that's really what it is. It's collaborative work. It's win-win-win. It's how do we learn enough about a partner to understand their goals, and how do we help them reach their goals while we reach our goals, right? And so this is a really interesting book with some interesting strategies and tactics, because I love to, in addition to getting you all excited about doing it and showing you some examples, I love to give you some tools that might help you do it a way that you haven't thought of before, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Bernie's company, new company, Rollick, is one of my clients, and
ah,
they they work in the specialty side,
they
ATVs,
do.
RVs, and he practices what he preaches,
Yes,
down all the way through his employees. They all have this very collaborative with their client. It's in some ways you're right. It's competition, but it's co-opetition, right? We
right.
could be considered competitors, but we're all working for a common goal. That's what I love about this industry. And Bernie was at the forefront of that. I got
Yes,
to
he
meet
was.
him last year at NADA. He's fantastic. I'm going to read that book. Thank you.
You bet. While we're talking about books, and I love quotes, and this is kind of a little side quote, but given a lot that's happening contextually around us today, I was so struck by this. You
Mm,
know, really, we need to restore the full meaning of that old word duty,
mm,
because it is the other side of right, and of rights. We
mm.
hear so much about rights today,
Yeah,
but let's all agree that you earn those. There's
that's awesome.
duty that goes along with it. And the great thing about thinking of reciprocity that way is because it's such a positive way of doing it. It's not sometimes you think of duty as drudgery
Yep.
or hard work or whatever, but reciprocity is actually fun.
Mm.
It's meaningful, it's rewarding. And so I say go out and do it. And we've got lots of folks that we know that reciprocate, and we want to thank them all. I get an opportunity to do that. And Greg, thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.